It started with a whisper from the back seat. We had just come out of the grocery store, the kind of place where I had long ago learned to calculate every item in my head before we reached the checkout line. Milk eggs, a box of cereal if it was on sale, no snacks unless they were marked down. My daughter sat behind me, arms folded across her chest, her voice low enough to make me wonder if she had meant to say it out loud. "Mom, are we poor?" I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I had never expected the question to come from her. She was only 10, old enough to notice, not old enough to name the shape of what she was seeing, but somehow she had started connecting dots I didn't think were visible. I forced a smile she couldn't see, eyes still fixed on the road. "Why would you ask that?" I asked carefully. Not defensive, but not relaxed either. Her answer came after a long pause. "There's money." A lot. I saw it on Dad's screen. He left his laptop open. The words slid out of her mouth like a quiet confession. At a red light, I turned around. She wasn't trying to be dramatic. She wasn't trying to stir trouble. She looked puzzled, like someone who had stumbled into a room she wasn't supposed to enter. She added, "I didn't mean to look, but he left the tab open." It had his name. It said 200,000. I blinked. Not because I didn't hear her, but because my mind was already trying to figure out what made less sense, the number itself, or the fact that it existed in complete silence. At home, I sent her to the living room and told her I'd make dinner soon. She didn't protest. She knew something had shifted. And as I stood at the kitchen sink, water running, I stared out the window and tried to remember the last time we had gone on a family vacation. I couldn't recall one. I thought about the shoes I'd passed on last month because Lila's had still technically fit the birthday party I scaled back, the bills I had covered from my own savings because we needed to stay tight. And now, this. That night, I lay awake long after Lila had gone to bed. The house was still, but my thoughts wouldn't stop shifting. Not racing, just drifting one after the other, like waves pressing against a door that had never truly been locked. I tried to remember the last time I had seen our joint account months a year. He had changed the login, said it was for security reasons. I hadn't questioned it. Why would I? We weren't rich, but we managed. He handled the bills, I stretched the groceries, it worked, or so I thought. I opened my laptop, not really sure what I was looking for. Email, nothing unusual. Shared folders. Nothing new. Then I typed his name into the search bar. I don't know why I did it. Habit instinct. A PDF popped up, tax returns last year's. I clicked. The numbers didn't match what I remembered him telling me. His salary was higher. Significantly. I sat back in my chair, eyes fixed on the page. He hadn't just hidden the account, he'd been hiding his income. I remembered the nights I skipped dinners, so Lila would have enough. The afternoons I told her we couldn't afford the school trip, the time I picked up extra shifts and said it was good for us to save. And all along he had money stashed somewhere else. I should have felt rage, I expected to. But what settled in me wasn't fury, it was betrayal in its coldest form, the kind that doesn't scream or slam doors, the kind that quietly redraws the boundaries of trust and makes you realize how far you've been left behind. Lila didn't bring it up again. Not that day. Not the next. But something about her had changed. She used to ask for little things, a juice box at the store, an extra 10 minutes at the park. But now she waited for permission, even when she didn't have to. And when I said yes, her face didn't light up the way it used to. It was as if she didn't trust the yes anymore. I watched her one evening as she organized her pencils at the kitchen table. She was humming quietly, her shoulders tight. She paused halfway through and glanced toward the hallway, the same direction where my husband's office was. I followed her eyes. He wasn't there. The door was closed. But the way she looked at it told me more than anything she'd said. After dinner, I found her alone in her room, drawing a family picture. She didn't show it to me. I had to catch the edge of it when she got up to get water. She had drawn herself, me and him, but we were standing far apart, almost like we weren't holding hands anymore. I didn't say anything. I just sat on her bed after she left the room and stared at the image. Children don't always have the language for disappointment, but they express it anyway in their silence, in their spacing, in how they shrink themselves when they start sensing what they're not supposed to feel. She had felt it long before I gave her a name for it. And for the first time since she asked me that question in the car, I understood why it had hurt so deeply. Not because she found out something I hadn't, but because she had been carrying the question alone long enough to ask it without panic. I didn't ask him about the money, not directly. Instead, I started with his desk drawer. The one he always said was just a mess of receipts. I knew the sound it made when it opened a subtle stick halfway through from one warped piece of wood he never fixed. He wasn't home when I checked. He had taken Lila to her music class. It gave me exactly 40 minutes. Inside the drawer, I found envelopes, most unmarked, but one caught my eye, a pale blue folder labeled private. He never labeled anything. That word alone told me it was something I wasn't supposed to see. I opened it slowly. Inside were statements from an account I had never signed for. Not in my name, not ours, just his. The balance was consistent, not growing, not shrinking, just sitting there waiting. That money wasn't hidden for emergencies. It was being saved for something. Something that didn't include me. That night, he came home cheerful. He complimented the dinner. Told me he'd scheduled a family day next weekend, said Lila deserved a treat. He looked relaxed. I smiled, I nodded. I cleared the dishes. Then I asked casually, "When's the last time we went over our finances together?" He froze for just a second, enough for me to see it. That flicker of calculation, how much should he say? What did I already know? "It's been a while," he replied, "but everything's fine. I've been keeping it balanced." I didn't push. I didn't need him to confess. I only needed to watch how carefully he avoided the truth. Later, while he was in the shower, I walked past his phone on the nightstand. I didn't touch it, didn't open anything, but I looked at it and realized something that sent a shiver down my spine. He no longer brought it with him everywhere because he no longer believed I would look. And that kind of comfort only comes from long-term control. The first thing I moved was the office chair. It had always faced the wall. The monitor turned just enough to shield the screen from the hallway. I turned it toward the door. Only a few inches, but it was enough to make him uncomfortable. He didn't say anything that night, just paused in the doorway, glanced at the shift, then continued in. The air had changed even if the words hadn't. The second thing I moved was the login screen. He'd grown used to leaving the computer unlocked, a habit formed by years of unchecked privacy. I changed the power settings. Now it required a password every time the screen dimmed. When he asked if something had glitched, I said it must have. No apology. No smile. He didn't press. I started answering questions differently, too. He would ask if we needed anything from the store. Instead of the usual, "whatever you think," I gave specific answers. Yes, milk, and a copy of the receipt. Simple, flat. But it drew a line. One night, I removed his watch from the shared dresser and placed it in the guest room, the one he used as a spare closet. When he noticed, he picked it up, walked back, and held it out. "Why'd you move this?" I looked at him without flinching. "Because it's not mine." No anger, no accusation, just a boundary calmly drawn. He didn't respond. He placed the watch back where I had put it, and for the first time in years, he didn't try to move something back without asking. It wasn't about the objects. It never had been. It was about the quiet reclaiming of space, not in bursts, but in decisions too small to fight, yet too clear to miss. It arrived on a Thursday, a small white box on the kitchen counter, wrapped neatly, a silver ribbon tied with precision. No note, just my name on a tag I didn't recognize. He was already at work when I found it. I didn't open it right away. The sight of it felt too calculated. Too clean. It didn't look like love. It looked like performance. Still, I opened it. Inside, a necklace. Delicate, beautiful. The kind of thing someone would buy to be seen giving. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I liked it, not because I hated it, but because I understood exactly what it was meant to do. That night, he came home smiling. He kissed me on the cheek and asked if I liked it. I said it was thoughtful. I didn't say thank you, and I didn't wear it. He noticed. He didn't ask, but I saw his eyes flick toward my neck the next morning at breakfast. He poured his coffee in silence. I buttered Lila's toast without looking at him. That afternoon, I placed the box on his desk, still open, still untouched. Later, I heard him close the lid quietly when he thought I wasn't listening. A week passed. He didn't bring up the necklace again, but something in his tone shifted. Not frustrated, not angry, but searching, as if the script had flipped and he wasn't sure what lines were left for him to speak. And that was the point. He wasn't being punished. He was being watched the same way I had been watched for years, and he could feel it. I opened the new account on a Monday. The bank teller didn't ask why I needed it, just handed me the forms, smiled politely, and told me it would be active within 24 hours. I used my maiden name, not legally, just for the nickname on the card. It felt cleaner that way. Not hidden, but not branded with a name I no longer trusted. At home, I began redirecting. A small freelance check, a refund from Lila's canceled field trip. Little amounts, almost invisible, but they added up. I didn't tell him he didn't ask, and I had no reason to offer anything he hadn't earned. That week, I declined the joint card at the grocery store. I paid in cash, my own. He noticed. His brow lifted for half a second before he turned away. The next day, he asked if we were okay. I said yes, and we were just not in the way he meant. By the end of the month, I had enough saved to cover rent. Not for this house, for any house somewhere else if I needed it. I wasn't planning to leave, but I wasn't going to be caught powerless again. Not financially, not emotionally. Control doesn't always return with a bang. Sometimes it tiptoes back in on the souls of quiet choices. One login, one transaction, one line item at a time. And now I had proof, not of what he did, but of what I could do without him. It started with flowers, roses. He left them on the dining table. No card, just the scent of habit trying to imitate affection. I didn't move them, didn't throw them out either. They wilted there over the week, unwatered, untouched. He noticed. The next evening, he asked if I wanted to go out dinner. Just the two of us. He used the same tone he'd used in our early years, the one that once made me feel chosen. But now it felt like a script. "I've made a reservation," he said already, halfway to hope. I declined. No explanation. No lie, only the truth, wrapped in quiet resistance. Not tonight. He offered to cook the next day, and he did. The meal was good, familiar, but the air between us didn't change. He wanted gratitude. I offered a nod. Later, he reached for my hand while we were watching something on TV. I let him hold it for a moment. Not out of longing, but out of memory. And then gently, I pulled away. Not forcefully, not symbolically, just enough to say, whatever you're trying to return to, I'm no longer standing there. He stopped trying by the end of the week. The silence that returned wasn't hostile. It was tired, and it belonged to him now. I waited until Lila was asleep. The house was quiet, not heavy, not tense, just still. He was in the living room scrolling through his phone. The television played softly in the background, some show neither of us was really watching. I sat across from him and turned the volume off. He looked up surprised, but he didn't speak first. "I know about the account," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain how I found out I didn't mention the folder or the laptop or the numbers burned into my memory, because it didn't matter how I knew. What mattered was that I did, and I wasn't asking for clarification. I wasn't hoping for denial. I was giving him one chance to sit in the truth without decoration. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His fingers tightened around the remote. "It's not what you think." I let the silence stretch. "Then tell me what it is," I said. He hesitated, tried to find a version of the story that sounded less like betrayal. He failed. What followed wasn't a confession. It was a string of rationalizations wrapped in words like, "just in case," and "I was going to tell you," but nothing he said changed what I had already decided. I stood. "I'm not here to argue," I said quietly, "and I'm not staying to see if you change." He didn't ask what that meant. Not out loud, but his face asked. I didn't answer, because the truth had already been spoken, not by words, but by time and silence and the years I spent shrinking. And now I was done shrinking. I didn't leave in the middle of the night. I didn't slam doors. I didn't pack in a panic. It was a Sunday. Lila was in her room coloring quietly. The house smelled like toast and coffee. A normal morning on the surface. He wasn't home. That wasn't planned, but it made things easier. I took 3 bags, one for Lila, one for myself, one for what I wouldn't come back for. No letters, no final words, no instructions on how to miss me properly. When Lila saw the bags, she didn't ask where we were going. She looked at me the way children do when they already know the answer but still want to hear you say it. Is this just for the weekend? I bent down, took her hand, and said, It's for as long as we need. She nodded, no tears, no fear. At the door I paused, not because I had doubts I didn't, but because leaving without being chased is its own kind of unfamiliar. And I wanted to remember how it felt to close a door without wondering if someone on the other side would demand to know why. That night in the small apartment I had signed for weeks earlier, I tucked Lila into bed. She looked around the new space with quiet curiosity. Do we have enough? She whispered. I brushed the hair from her face and whispered back, We have exactly what we need. Because we did, not just clothes or keys or money. We had space, we had choice, we had peace, and we weren't asking permission to keep it.